So tomorrow, when you go to Chipotle and they go, "Hey, that guac's going to be extra," do you say, "Sure, you want it?" You say, "Actually, no.
I have to go buy
I'm going to go buy Crash." Hold the guac.
Butterscotch.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 79 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast of Butterscotch Shenanigans.
Heyo.
I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, and I'm the Webbernet.
And today is December 27th, 2016.
It is right smack in between the end of this year and Christmas time.
That's right. And we have a warning before we go too deep, which is anything can happen on this show. There will be profanity, but nice profanity. So, you know, but if you're just upset by profanity in general, then you should get out of here.
Definitely.
All right. So what's going on this week? Sam's out of town.
Sam's gone. He's
cruising for a bruise.
I guess. Yeah.
He's
hopefully not too many bruises.
Who knows? He is on a cruise though. And those can get rough.
That's true.
You bruise your insides, I feel like.
From eating too much?
I went on a cruise once, and it was in 2005. And when you go on these things, it's like the food is included in your ticket.
Yeah.
And so
that means you have to eat as much as possible because
you don't understand how sunk costs work. And so you just walk up to any shop, any vendor, whatever, and you'll be like, "Hey, can I have that cheesecake?" And they just hand it to you, and you're like, "Thanks. Bye." And then you just leave. Yeah. And so I gained 15 pounds in 5 days. I ordered at one point we went to there's like timed dining times or whatever.
Yep.
And we went there and I just ordered everything and I ate all of it.
Yeah, it's hard to beat that just for sheer gluttony.
Yeah. That was a time in my life where I needed to gain 15 pounds though.
That's true.
But I did it. Mission accomplished. So hopefully, Sam, we might not even recognize him when he gets back.
Yeah, he might be morbidly obese.
Yep. And actually Sure is doing the same thing.
Yeah, he's also
and they almost accidentally ended up on the same cruise just by weird coincidence.
Yeah.
And then we've just been having good family times and chilling out. We're taking some time off from working super hard. We're still working.
We're still working
because we enjoy it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we also got some crazy news. Oh, before that though, we do have last episode we talked about trying to figure out why the hell everybody's listening to this podcast. And we don't know. So we put up a survey over at, you can get to it at podcast.bscotch.net.
Yeah, there's a link up at the top.
And we've got a pretty good number, like 50 something responses so far.
40 some responses.
So it's been interesting seeing what people have to say.
Yeah.
It's enlightening.
Yeah. We would love to know why you listen to this thing. And of course, if there are things that you like in particular about it or don't like in particular about it.
More importantly, if there's things you hate that you wish we would stop doing.
And it doesn't mean we will, because probably somebody else loves that thing. But, if the vote goes that way, it'd be really good to know. So if you go to, you can go to the podcast page, podcast.bscotch.net, or you can go to bit.ly/YCWB.
YCWB.
But the Y is spelled out as a word.
WHYCWB.
Right. Which now in retrospect is confusing.
It is.
So why coffee with butterscotch?
Yeah. And it is the case, like Adam was saying, that even if a whole bunch of votes go to one particular aspect of the podcast, this podcast is run by an electoral college system. So we're just going to
we'll just do what we want. So. Or maybe we won't.
Damn it.
Who's even to say?
Who's to say? We also got, on Friday, it was a weird day. We got a notification that Touch Arcade gave Crashlands their Game of the Year award for 2016. It was a bizarre moment, given what we had to do to make this game and the shit that we had to sort of
deal with,
wade through, I guess.
Yep.
And even just the fact that there's just there was 3 of us who made the game and seeing it, and also Game Zebo gave it Game of the Year just today, and seeing it there, and then seeing something like Supercell's Clash of Clans at Clash Royale at the number 2 spot. It's real fucking weird.
Yeah.
It's very surreal.
Yeah.
But we're super appreciative of just the fact that people think about these things and that people took the time to give it a chance and actually buy it and play it to even reach the point where they could make that evaluation.
Yep.
it's very humbling, and we just want to say thank you to everybody who supported us throughout this year.
Yeah,
it's been a hell of a ride, and we hope to do even bigger, cooler things.
Well, yeah, because now the bar is set super high.
Yeah,
because we have to do better than this. We now have to do better than Game of the Year on Touch Arcade and Game Zebo.
Now we have to make Game of the Years.
Game of the Years would be a good next step. Or we also next year.
Yeah,
we launch Quadrupus Rampage 2, presumably. We get Game of the Year on mobile from at least both of those sites again.
Sure, yeah.
But we also get Game of the Year on all of the other sites.
Just every site.
Exactly.
Even like Forbes.
Yeah, all of them. I actually saw the New Yorker has a top 10
The New Yorker. Yeah,
games list now. Which is not the first thing you think of when you think of video games, but we're not on that one.
Yeah.
But next year we will be on the top of the New Yorker also.
Who knows? But yeah, it's also a weird thing because it's not something that we were going for, just in the sense that we just wanted to make a really fucking good game.
Yeah.
And it may be the case that, and I think with Crashlands, we hit kind of a weird sort of a spot with it where we made it, I should say, streamlined and simple enough and accessible enough that it doesn't have virtual controls, doesn't have all that stuff, that is clearly very playable on mobile and everything, and very accessible to people. And it just was able to hit a much wider audience. But the games that we have a tendency to make are generally a lot more skill-based and action-y and whatnot. So it's possible that, the next couple of games we make are going to be more intense, more action-oriented, and just may not hit as big of an audience. So, who knows whether or not there'll be Game of the Year material, but
who knows? But on the other hand, though, even though Crashlands was well loved by the people who played it, it actually didn't hit that big of an audience.
Yeah,
as far as games go, and the ones that do tend to dominate are in fact those much more action oriented games. At least certainly on PC.
On PC,
yeah.
On mobile,
it's harder to say exactly because it's kind of the genre. The genres actually don't overlap that much between mobile and desktop in terms of how the gameplay ends up feeling, right?
Yeah.
Because things tend to be simplified and really focused around a single or very small number of mechanics. But on PC and on consoles, games are just expanding and becoming. They're trying to consume every genre at once, right? So they just keep on adding complexity. Where on mobile, everything's getting streamlined, and so there isn't even really a good direct comparison between those, actually.
Yeah, but what I'm excited about in Quadrupus 2 that we're starting to play around with is a question that kept coming up in Crashlands all the time. Was people were like, "What's the difference between the PC and the mobile version?"
Right.
And our answer was always, "Well, there isn't." Right. I mean, you can play it at a much higher resolution because you'll be able to run it better.
Yep.
There's some extra shader effects that you can use, but gameplay wise, it's the same. But it's looking more and more like with Quadrupus 2. Because of the same screen multiplayer with controllers and stuff, it's just going to be a very different animal. Like it'll still have the core of the game the same, where you can do the single player campaign and all that stuff. But being able to plug controllers in and play with people, I think it's just going to change a lot of things about how we build the game and stuff. So, and the cool thing that we're hoping to do still, and again, like all this stuff about Quadrupus 2, we have no idea where it's going. So it may even not even ever happen.
Yep.
So just always bear that in mind when we're this early in the development process. But we're still planning on doing the Butterscotch ID stuff and save syncing and whatnot. So our hope is to come up with a system where you can log in to somebody else's computer with your Butterscotch ID and bring your character into their game and still play on same screen. And do that kind of stuff. So that's technology that we have not even started touching yet.
Nope.
And so who the fuck knows what's going to happen?
It would probably require. Oh, it's definitely going to require a complete overhaul of how Butterscotch ID works
Just
in the game.
Total overhaul.
But as I've been learning in recent weeks, there are much better ways that Butterscotch ID on the website could have been put together.
Yeah.
Which of course I knew that the whole time, but I didn't actually know what those better ways were because I was learning learning web development while building the thing. And now I've been learning some new tech and really diving deep into how deployment looks and how testing works and like how to actually set up a website.
How to be a real program.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And now looking back, it's amazing that this thing works at all. Frankly.
Yeah.
Oh my God. But it does still, but it is probably gonna be the case that we have to do a pretty large scale overhaul of Butterscotch ID and how it works so that we can do cool stuff like have two people log into their accounts on the same game, on the same machine.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing that we're learning all the time and coming up with new ways of doing things and new techniques, and also trying to take a look at what other studios have done and figure out how can we leverage those ideas. So one of the other things that we're looking at is the Crashlands creator, which we still have not published for player use yet. For a number of reasons, but it's still in progress.
Yeah, well, actually, it's really just one reason, really. Well, two reasons. One is it's not ready yet, but the reason it's not ready yet is the main reason, which is just everything else that's happening has higher priority.
Yeah,
it's
because we don't know what the creator is going to do, and it's also going to add a lot of maintenance and overhead for us to moderate it and all that.
Yeah, the thing that we know for sure is it's going to create work for us,
and with
even
questionable.
The thing we don't know is what the benefit is going to be, if any, and so that kind of always keeps it forced down the priority queue because we need to focus on the things that we know are actually going to work.
Which something like launching Quadrupus 2 would be
would definitely work. And so the creator is kind of it's an indefinite back burner state, which just basically means anytime I clear something else off of my plate, I go work on it for a little while, and then like something else comes up. It's the best case this whole year has been a 2-week straight stint.
So there's some things.
Nuts.
There's some things. But because of so we developed almost all of Crashlands and then started work on the creator.
Right.
And the creator allowed us to put so much content into the game that, looking back, it's obvious. But in the future, we're going to plan on making a tool like that in tandem with the game. So instead of making the tool afterwards for adding content to the game, plan on making that tool early and then use it to inform decisions about how the game is going to be put together and stuff. Because if you look at something like StarCraft, or the Warcraft games or whatever, they, Blizzard is famous for having these really flexible and powerful map editors.
Yeah. And they even have scripting events and stuff. So you
can basically program things to happen. And people like Dota was a game that was made inside the map editor. Right. So, I mean, League of Legends came out of a map editor, basically. And so in thinking about that, it's obvious that those tools are not actually there for the players. Those tools were the tools that Blizzard developed so that they could put the game together. Right. So they could make the campaign.
Well, and a lot of it is a separation between the people who know the absolute fundamental details of how the game works, which are the programmers, or actually most on a big team, any given programmer actually doesn't know how the whole thing works. They know how the piece that they wrote works, right? And so you need to be able to abstract out the generation of content. So once you decide how the game works and what the rules are, you want to make sure that somebody else, ideally your artists and your game designers, since those tend to be separate roles on bigger teams, you want those people to be able to come in and just add stuff and start to build the game while you're sort of in the background, while your programmers are basically making the engine. Yeah. And we need to do that, even though for us, those are all the same people, right? But even still, that separation of knowledge is actually essential because you don't want to have to build the entire mental model of how the game works to go in and add a new character to it.
Exactly. So we're keeping an eye on this now and trying to make our systems more flexible and more robust, and then developing better tools for us to add content to the game, so that we should be able to spend a lot less time making a game, but get way more stuff in it, which is just better for everybody.
Yeah, and it's basically putting a lot of the effort on the front end of the development pipeline instead of on the back end. Yeah. Of not having to then just spend like what we did with Crashlands. We basically spent the whole front end slowly working up how the engine would work. And the last few months, we're just pumping it full of content. Right. Using the tools that we made. And it probably would have been better to go the other way around.
Well, maybe. I don't know.
Who's to say?
We maybe didn't know enough. It came out fine, but there was some other shit going on at the time.
There was that.
Also, we have Crashlands is currently on sale on Steam for $9.99, I believe.
True. So that's the cheapest it's been on mobile. On PC
and Mac. And it's also on sale on GOG.
Is it still? I have no idea.
I think, or it was. I don't know. In any case, check it out. Maybe
everybody has their holiday sales at a different time.
It's all different. And we have some big news, which is we're about to have Crashlands have its first ever mobile sale. Yep. Starting on the 28th, which I believe is the day that we're publishing this podcast.
Should be.
So if you hear this podcast and you haven't gotten Crashlands yet, you can go get it now. It'll be significantly cheaper than normal.
So cheap, it's basically free, even though it's already so cheap.
It's already $5 on mobile. But this sale will push it down substantially further
Yeah,
than that.
it's going to go from the cheap sandwich price range down to
a pickle for your sandwich.
a pickle for your sandwich. Or actually maybe guacamole.
Pickle range. Yep.
This is the cost of adding guac.
So tomorrow when you go to Chipotle and they go, hey, that's guac's going to be extra. Do you say, sure you want it? You say, actually, no.
I have to go buy
I'm going to go buy Crash. Hold the guac. All right. So that's all happening. And that's pretty much all we got. But otherwise, it's just been an incredible year. And we just want to thank everybody for being here for this ride. It's been super cool. And
thanks a lot. I mean, the year itself was shitty in basically every other way.
A lot of other things were shitty.
Yeah. But Crashlands
that's always the case.
that is always the case.
The world is full of shit. But sometimes you just got to power through it and try to make awesome things.
Just wade through it.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get to some questions. These questions come from podcast.bscotch.net.
That's
true. If you want to ask, just head over there and sign in with your Bscotch ID. You can also ask anonymously, but why would you do that?
You really should.
We want to talk to you, So, all right. So let's get started. First question comes from Not a Hacker, which I'm dubious. I feel like if you have to say it.
Yeah, it's
questionable.
Probably questionable. We should maybe check his.
We should probably look into that.
We should probably look into
Yeah. Banned. All right. So Not a Hacker says, how does one get good at Crashlands? How does one get good at Crashlands? If you want to get good,
and I
specifically
assume
at Crashlands,
not by hacking.
Not by hacking. Well, this is not a hacker, so I mean, it's implied.
Yeah, and I guess, and so maybe they understand, unlike many hackers, that being good at something is not the same
as cheating.
So that you appear to be good.
Right.
So this is probably asking about actually
doing the game.
How does one get good at Crashlands?
Okay. So basically what's some pro strats? If you want to like hit MLG 360 no scope Crashlands level and get those razor sponsorships.
Yeah.
Specifically Harry's razors.
Right.
Then what do you do?
Yeah, I think the first thing you need to do is probably read the fucking story.
Read the manual. Read the story too.
There's also a manual. That's true.
We published a Crashlands manual, which does have just pro strats.
It's got pro strats everywhere, and also some lore tips and tricks. It's a good thing. But yeah, the main problem everybody has who plays the game is their refusal to pay attention to the quests and the text therein. Because as we talked about on this podcast before, we made the decision not to just give you a checklist.
There's no quest tracker that says collect 10 things, 0 out of 10.
We just didn't want to do that because we wanted to tell you a story that you participate in, not give you shopping lists. So, so as a consequence, because especially people just become so used to just being told, go do this, 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 and this, and they go do it. They have a checklist, and it's obvious what has happened when they're done, even though they don't know why they did it. Then when they play Crashlands, they are first confused and then angry. They go because
they're like, "What's going on with these words?"
Right. I don't want to read
hit
these
by all these words. What is this? A book?
Yep. And if you go through the first week in particular after launch was frustrating, as our lovely moderators will attest. Because at that time when the game first came out, of course, there was no information on the web about problem solving people had done to try to figure out how to do stuff, how to complete quests, how to kill things, whatever. And so there were just question after question after question that all had the same answer, which was
go back and read that quest.
Just
read it. It says,
and then it'll be fine. It tells you exactly what to do. Yeah. And there were a few in particular that are particularly notorious. And even people we know who we've joked about this specific thing with before, they'll come to us then weeks later in person after playing Crashlands and be like, yeah, actually, I think I'm pretty sure. I know you guys said this isn't a bug. I'm pretty sure I found a real bug here. And we're like, go back,
just go read it. Go read that quest.
And sure enough, they just missed something.
Sometimes it'll be something like the quest will say, kill this creature and then put a sign down.
Right.
And they'll excitedly be reading the quest. They'll read kill this creature and then close the quest and not read the last 4 words of this.
Yep. Or they do, but they get so focused on killing the creature and maybe they die a few times and it takes 20
and then they
minutes,
forget about the sign.
And then they just assume that now that they've killed this, it's the only thing they had in their mind. So there actually are some quests that, even though it was clearly stated what you were supposed to do in the summer patch, the quality of life patch, we went through a whole bunch of these quests that, again, told you exactly what to do, but we were just getting so tired of answering the same questions.
We just removed some of the objectives.
Yeah, we just removed the objectives that people didn't like want to see, right? That they just somehow couldn't notice in there. And that was really, we felt like it was better to have more stuff in there because it's just more interesting and encourages people to read it and all of that. But on the other hand, we also have shit to do.
Yeah. It makes a lot of work for us. So, but that is a thing you can do to get good is read. Just read stuff.
Yeah.
Also, you can tap things once or click, depending on your control method.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a actions per minute, pro gamer kind of game.
Yep.
So for example, you click on a tree one time, Flux will run over there and start whacking that tree. You don't have to, click it 463 times.
Nope.
You get the same results. And also pick up everything. There's no inventory. It's all infinite, right? So you can just stuff your pockets.
Which is
full of
also
grapes.
why picking up things is automatic.
Yeah.
For basically the same reason that the same trouble with people not reading, they'd been basically trained that if you have a limited inventory, only pick up the things that you need for exactly what you want to do right now. And so we found people, even though they have an infinite inventory, would just leave shit everywhere and never pick it up.
So we made it so every time you broke apart a tree or something, it would suck up all the components.
Which turns out to also be nicer because it's a pain in the ass and dumb to have to go pick up everything.
Why would you have to click everything?
But so that was a sort of a side bonus of having streamlined that. But yeah, I think pro gamer tip for
tips.
every game, just pay attention.
Just pay attention and try to do better.
And just
pay attention to what the game is doing and what it asks you to do and just do those things.
Yeah.
And do them super good.
Right.
All right. Next question comes from Kevin888. Are video games a total waste of time?
Whose time?
That's a great question. He did not specify, just a general total waste of time. I don't think so. Here's what I think. I think video games serve a very particular purpose, which is that games provide for people an opportunity to accomplish things.
Right.
So if you think about, a while back, I was in a raiding guild in World of Warcraft. And when I say a while back, I mean like 10 years ago.
Yeah, sometime ago.
And we were stuck on this one particular boss for 6 weeks. And there's 25, it was a 25 person raid guild. And every 2 days a week, actually 3 days a week, we'd go in there and for 3 hours, we would fight this boss.
Yep.
And just get the shit kicked out of us. And in the off nights, we were all very determined. In the off nights, we would do everything we could to go and try to make our characters better. And we were reading strategies and working on our gear. And then we'd come back a couple days later and try it again and get our asses kicked. And we just did this over and over and over again. And the moment that we took that boss down, it was just an explosion of screaming on voice chat, followed by all of us just being like, we're never fucking doing this again. So and I think about when I talk, it's like people run marathons, people climb Mount Everest, people do all kinds of things that take weeks and weeks and months and years of practice and trying. And I think it stands to reason that accomplishment is an accomplishment, right?
Yeah.
I mean, anything you bust your ass toward and finally achieve that very few people can do is something that people need in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the real world does a shitty job of providing those opportunities.
Yeah.
Like if you want to lose weight or something, there are so many variables that go into what that means and how that happens that you can work super hard toward it. But if you missed something, or if you slid, or if you took like a week off or whatever, maybe you started your pledge during the holidays when everybody's throwing turkey stuffing in your face or whatever, right? There's all kinds of things that happen to derail that. And there's no good feedback on what the consequences of your actions are.
The feedback loop is very long term.
Yeah. And so I think having the ability to step into a place where the rules are clear and where your actions have very understandable consequences, I think is very helpful for people. I think it's why people seek out games as an escape, or just as a nice pastime, is because you get to do those things, where in the real world it's much more fuzzy and gray and complicated, and it's hard to own your accomplishments. And so, yeah. That's what I think.
But it doesn't even have to be about enormous accomplishments, because most people, at least from what I can tell, who are playing games, including myself, don't actually seek out these really epic long-term challenges in a game. In a game context,
but even the small ones matter. You know,
I mean,
like building a rocket in Kerbal Space Program and having it like wobble crazily on its way up, but still somehow get to orbit. You're like, fuck yeah.
Or getting your Kerbal stranded in orbit because you ran out of fuel.
And then you're like, how do I get that?
Another one to get him back down.
How do I get that Kerbal back down? Like you're creating your own problems even, but they're understandable problems.
They're concrete.
That you can try. And you'll probably blow up and kill like 40 Kerbals on the way to rescuing that one that's stranded in orbit. Right. But still, when you rescue that Kerbal,
but you'll know why each time.
Yeah.
Right. So you can do better each time.
Yeah. That's what games provide that I think. I think it matters to people. I think people need that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why we have sports, you know, that's why we have just games in general is we need those clear goals that we can hit. Yeah. So, so I think, I don't think games are a waste of time.
Although I guess it's interesting when you bring that to sports or esports, right? Because now you're not even the one in either of those scenarios. You're not the one getting that achievement, right?
Yeah, but there's a reason why people say we when they're talking about their sports team, right? It's because something
they are somehow actually
something about people take ownership of things they put a lot of time into, right? And if you grow up watching like every Cardinals game, then you're part of that team somehow.
Right.
And when they score a run, you feel like you helped.
Right.
You know?
Well, actually, I guess it even goes further than that, doesn't it? Because a lot of people establish traditions and superstitions around those events where they'll like wear a certain thing because they
one time they wore those underpants.
Right.
Their team just crushed the other team.
Yeah. So it's actually, they feel like they do have an influence. So it's not.
Magic pants. It's kind of like those pigeons that started learning how to do elaborate dances in that experiment. Did you hear about this? Yeah. There was an experiment to see how pigeons would respond to random stimuli. And what was it? It was like they would give them a food pellet, but it was on a random timer. And the pigeons would try to figure out how their actions related to the dispensing of the food pellet.
Yep.
And so over time, they would just develop these elaborate rituals that they would start going through in sequence to try to make the food pellet come out. I mean, people are pattern recognizing machines.
As are all animals.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think that's
but the beauty of that though is once you've established the superstition, right? So if you're the pigeon, you did a little, like you hopped on one foot and then a pellet came out, right?
And you're like,
ooh, so now you establish this
connection. It now.
So now you start hopping on one foot in hopes that a pellet will come out.
And you do that enough.
Every once in a while it will, because it's random, right?
And you'll tend to not remember the 40 times you hopped in a pellet didn't come out.
Confirmation bias, right?
Yeah.
And we see this with every
people wear a lucky shirt when they go take a test.
Yep.
Whatever. But again, I mean, I think that speaks to how in the real world, connection between your actions and what actually happens in the world is very loose and hard to discern sometimes.
Yeah.
So we come up with all these crazy ways.
Because depending on the game and how much of it is random, so take things like Binding of Isaac, right?
Yeah.
Which has enormous amounts of random components. Or I mean, frankly, anything, right? And we've actually even seen this for Crashlands, where people see something happen and then they assume because again, they saw the pattern, right? That there's a deep connection there. They start trying to infer stuff off of it. And so when you see people exploring a game mechanic or trying to understand the fundamentals of how do I get like the best loot and that sort of thing, for a long time, it's just people moving through superstition space, right? And you'll find people just like at each other's throats because they disagree on the mechanism by which something happens, even though
both probably wrong.
They're both wrong, probably.
Well, this reminds me, there was somebody made a creature guide in the Crashlands forums.
Oh, right.
And they were talking about the Wampet attack.
Yeah.
And they said they figured it out.
Right.
Which is they said that the Wampet always does 3 normal attacks and then a double attack.
Right.
And sometimes when you encounter the Wampet, it will have sort of rolled the dice and landed in a different starting point in its attack pattern. It's like maybe the first time you attack it, it'll do a double attack, but then it'll do 3 regulars and then another double or whatever.
Right.
Sometimes it'll do 2 regulars and then a double attack. The problem is most fights with Wampets don't last more than a couple attacks.
Yeah. Which is why you'd only see a handful of attacks. So you'd always think you started some of the right, unless you saw 2 double attacks back to back.
Right. Which does happen. Because it's wrong. It's totally random. I think it's about Wampets have something like like a 1 in 3 chance or 1 in 4 chance.
Is it
to do a
also
double
random
attack.
for creatures that have a short range attack? Is that based on where your position is relative to them? So like a Zug, for example. If you're
It's
next
random.
to a Zug, that's also random, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they'll randomly choose their attack,
Right.
and then they will close the gap based on what their attack is. So if they choose a melee, that close range attack, then they'll run up to you and try to use it.
Okay.
But again, selection of the attack is totally random.
Yeah. Well, it's
So-
one of the interesting things because I even know that it's completely random. I really believed that it was because I was told that at some point.
Yeah.
But when I'm fighting like a Zug, right? I'm always like, okay, I need to stay away from it because if I get too close, it'll use its short range attack.
And
Right?
it doesn't care.
It doesn't care at all.
Yeah, this way, like you were sitting in the room when it was programmed, and still,
Right.
you get
So
that
it's
tendency.
not even actually that the game world is a cleaner, more understandable space. It's that the things that are happening are stripped down and much simpler so that even though you're still making up superstitions about how the system works, you get to do so with way more confidence, right?
You get a lot more information.
There's a lot more information and you can actually even experiment with it and test it. And if you really care about testing your superstitions, then you actually can in that environment.
Yeah.
Which you
Just
really can't do
fight
most of the time in
50
real life.
Zugs and record your fight.
Yep. And we saw this actually. We saw people trying to. It's really fun to watch people do this. We saw a bunch of people on our subreddit r/Crashlands put together this is quite a while ago, I guess, but put together a spreadsheet trying to figure out what the randomization was for weapon stats.
Yeah.
So there were a group of like 5 or 6 people, and they would just re-roll and re-roll and recraft and re-roll for all the weapon types. And try to figure out
Just
what
kept
the connection
compiling
was.
all their info.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out what the connection was between what the quality level of the item was and what its stats would be and all that. And they were actually starting to put it together. And it was just really cool to watch that. It was like, here are people collecting data about this fictional world in the same way that scientists do.
You're doing experiments.
In the real world, only the feedback loop on that is way, way tighter.
Yep.
Which is very cool. But then those people get that same sense of accomplishment by unraveling how the thing works as somebody else, as a scientist would get about unraveling how the universe works.
Yeah.
Right.
It's all the same. Games are basically science.
They're basically,
So,
they are actually.
Yeah. You run in, you hit a pit of spikes, you die, you're like, okay, let me write that down.
Yeah, I shouldn't do that again.
Hitting spikes probably causes death. We'll need more testing.
Which is also why having these really hand-holdy tutorials that people complain about.
I hate them.
People, yeah.
Well, that's why people hate them.
That's
right?
why people hate them.
People want to try things.
Yeah, they want to get the satisfaction of learning how something works. And it's that finding that balance between making sure people can get started, right? And be able to figure stuff out because it isn't too opaque and then telling them too much.
Yeah.
Which is kind of an interesting challenge because when you just tell people how stuff works, you take that opportunity away from them to self-discover and be proud of themselves for having discovered or realized something.
Right. Yeah. All right. Next question comes from Arcarnix. How difficult was it to balance Juice Mancy throughout Crashlands, and how long did it take?
I have no answer to this because I was not involved.
Okay. I'll keep this somewhat brief. So I love game balance because I'm very well convinced that a game that isn't fun is just a game that hasn't been balanced well. And I actually gave a talk about this, but the audio was garbage. And so, so you can find it on YouTube, but you probably won't be able to understand my voice.
You have to crank up the volume and then
somehow you'll just be deaf and you can't understand it. So, as far as balancing the Juice Mancy stuff, I like to use what I can refer to as cascading balance variables, which is basically I create a single sort of balance dashboard for the game where all of the core foundational most important numbers are. Like, for example, how much HP does a thing have at level 1 or whatever? And then how much does that go up by every level? And then everything else in the game is inferred based off of that. So when it comes to the Juice Mancy stuff, it was basically a question of what's the cost of using juice to reroll a weapon, to do that stuff. But here's the cool thing. It doesn't matter how much it costs. What matters is how much it costs relative to how fast you're getting juice. That's the connection to establish, right? So it basically just amounted to plugging in some numbers. And so right now I think juice has something like a 4% drop rate off of just everything. And then just kind of playing with that and seeing how long does it take me to get 10 juice? Does that seem like a pretty reasonable amount of time to be able to re-roll a thing? And then also you can reverse engineer that. If you have a 4% drop rate, how long will it take you, or how many things will you have to destroy to get 10 juice? 200 something, whatever. And then add in the little what do you call it? Juice crystal clusters, which you can break apart to get a little extra burst of juice.
And put signs on to go harvest over time.
And so usually what I will do when it comes to balance is I will balance the game around the sort of constant stream of things. So for example, the regular juice drops, and ignore the spiky surprises like the juice crystal clusters. Because if I took those clusters into account as part of it, then they would become sort of required.
Yeah, they're now essential instead of bonuses.
Yeah, so the game is always built around just the foundational, or the balance is built around the foundational components, and then the bonuses are not taken into consideration. That way they actually are bonuses. So yeah, I think the balance was pretty straightforward. It maybe just took a couple hours. So yeah. But again, that's only because I've done this so goddamn many times that
also the juice mancy part of the patch was the least time.
Most of it was the controller support. Yeah.
I mean, how many hours went into the juice mancy system?
The system itself only took maybe like 6 or 7 hours. The most time came with the UI work of building the juice forge and putting that together and putting together the animation of having the stats explode and all that stuff. That took a while, but no, yeah, it was pretty straightforward. So, all right, next question comes from Pixel Tech. Hey, that's what it starts with. Hey, I'm fairly new to you guys' games and I love them so much. I don't know if you've answered this before, but will you ever make Crashlands for Linux? Thank you guys so much for the joy you bring us fans. Perxelturbs. I don't know what Perxelturbs. Maybe it's some kind of a pen name.
Yeah, it's signed Perxelturbs, but it's from Pixel Tech.
Right. So perhaps some kind of nom de plume.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to feel about that.
Will you ever make a Crashlands for Linux?
So I have actually made a build for Ubuntu.
Did it work?
It did, but I was doing it on a virtualized Ubuntu machine on my actual laptop, and so it was laggy as fuck because, of course, the virtual machine has limited access to resources. And it just so happens that I don't, even though I have like 5 old laptops at home now that I've accrued over my life, none of them have sufficient specs to install modern Ubuntu, nor have like anything like a decent, even, built-in graphics card. Like, no, they just have garbage hardware.
I ran into this problem as well. I had an old an Asus E PC from 2008 or something.
Probably, yeah.
And I realized as I was trying to put Ubuntu on it, and I realized that its specs were like a third of my phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, actually, this is not going to work.
That's true.
It's not going to work.
Yeah, my old laptops are worse than my phone now. Yeah, so we just don't have just kind of a spare machine sitting around to do it with. And the deal is that.
But if we did, would we?
Well, that's the question, right? Is I personally, I love Linux because I'm a web dev, which means you're either on Linux or you're kind of a nut, because why would you spend that money on any other system if you're making web tools? But yeah, so I love Linux. I spent a lot of my learning of how computers work and how to program all that kind of stuff was done in the context of Linux, and so I like it a lot, even outside of the whole like open source is awesome and all that kind of stuff, which I used to buy into and now I don't really give a shit about. But
some people are very gung ho about it.
Some people are, and I mean, and I know why. Like, I get it, right?
It's a cool idea.
It's a cool idea. So yeah, I think Linux is a very amazing platform, and frankly, I would be happy to have the game available on Linux. It's a question, just like it always is, of
cost benefit.
It's cost benefit analysis, right? And a lot of this is just completely unknown in a similar sense that the Crashlands creator has a bunch of known costs, a completely unknown benefit, and a bunch of unknown costs, right? And so that's why it's constantly on the back burner, because I absolutely want to get it out and we'll keep working on it. But we don't know what the consequences are going to be and if it's worth the actual time. And it's the same deal with a Linux port, because Linux port is actually, because we're using GameMaker, a Linux port itself is trivially easy to make. Like, we just change a drop down, get a virtual machine running, and build to it, right?
It's not about making it though.
It's not about making it. It's about what happens when it doesn't work, right? And we're already facing this on Mac, which is much better supported both with our engine and just the number of people using the platform, right? On Mac, our builds are a little wonky always.
They don't respect full screen.
Yeah, there's all
kinds of weird.
There's just some weirdness.
Weird stuff.
And we didn't know what to expect when we did that either. We just knew that was a sizable fraction of the market, meaning a few percent.
A few
on Steam,
percent.
right? But they do make up about 10% of our purchases.
Right, because they have fewer games available to them.
That's the idea,
so.
right? Who knows? But the idea is that because Mac users just have fewer games that they can play, then basically the competition for Mac users is smaller.
Yeah, any given game
gets more downloads.
So
it's a sizable fraction of our Steam player base is on that. But Linux is a now a much smaller subset of that. Similarly, it's the same problem though. We don't know actually how many of them, because they're even more limited actually in what games are available to them. They might again provide a substantial fraction of new users, but we don't know. And because we don't even have in-house a Linux machine, though we know it's easy to make one if you have a spare piece of hardware, where we can sit down and spend a bunch of time testing. And we don't want to sit down and spend a bunch of time testing.
we got to make more games.
We have to make more stuff. And so this is just all to say, I personally would love to see Crashlands on Ubuntu. But unlike Mac, which at minimum, even though there's some trouble there, it's a very standardized platform because it's tightly controlled by a monopoly, right? So like, you know what to expect, and the amount of variability isn't that high. When it comes to Linux, though, somebody could be running fucking anything in the universe.
Well, and of course, Linux users are notorious for digging into things.
Yeah, for trying to run on anything.
And I mean, we see this on Android sometimes. Somebody be like, "Oh yeah, I'm running like a modified Android kernel with all these different ROMs and stuff and blah," and like the game is crashing. And we're like, we can't help you with that. And so Linux, you'd have a similar problem.
Well, actually, it would be much more sizable because I think the fraction of Linux users who are like getting into the guts of it, versus the fraction of Android users who are tinkering is going to be very different. And in a lot of ways, that's a great thing because that means that Linux users are really good at solving their own problems.
Yes,
but they need to be because they're making a lot of their own problems, right? And we know we're going to get caught in that crossfire somehow,
right?
Where people are going to expect us, because we've made it available for Linux, they're going to expect us to solve their problems for them. And that's exactly it. No, we can't. Like none of us are like, I use Linux constantly, but as superficially as possible, right? And none of us have time to be experts in the platform because we're too busy trying to build stuff. And so that means we won't be able to solve a lot of these problems. And this is one of those many why we can't have nice things problems, right? Is we can't just make it and make sure that it works on like a few machines, right? And then put it out and say, hey, right? Yeah. Now it's on you. Good luck, right?
Well, we had the problem on Windows. Somebody would say, hey, I have 5 monitors put together. And I'm wondering why your game doesn't support 18 by 1 aspect ratio.
Right.
I want it to spread across all 5 of my monitors.
Right. And then somehow that's our fault, right?
How about no? Yeah. How about it just doesn't do that?
Exactly. That's exactly. Or actually, I think it's because it tried to or something because it wasn't. I don't know.
It was trying to, and it turned into a weird, like a weird little thin slice in the middle of the screen. Because it was respecting the aspect ratio of their entire setup.
But it was only on one screen.
Yeah. So it just kind of like turned into a little line.
Oh, shit. So people do weird stuff and expect us to somehow be responsible for that.
Well, there's also the added, this is why we're always hesitant to do stuff like controller support or whatever.
Yep.
And even with WASD support, which I thought like we did it and I was like, cool, it's done. Right. Mm-hmm. Because every game I've played this top down like that is like you WSD controls and then you click to interact with things or whatever. And sure enough, we got a somewhat irate individual in our Steam forums who was mad, not about the WSD support, but that it didn't go far enough. And that they wanted to have several other buttons next to their left hand that they could use to interact with things because they don't want to have to use both hands to play the game. And so we spent all this time implementing WSD support, and what we gained was an angry customer where we didn't quite hit it right to their specs, you know?
Yeah.
So
and this is why most sensible businesses build stuff that will satisfy most people, right?
Because you can't please everyone.
Because we know we can't please everybody. And in fact, it's not worth trying in a lot of ways because best case scenario, you get a few more happy people, but you've now created new problems for yourself. And because by introducing things like controller support, the new problem we have is now we are responsible for support tickets when someone's controller doesn't work with the game, right? Yep. Which has already happened a bunch of times.
Yeah. So far, though, every time it's been on their end, thankfully.
Yeah.
So,
but that's part of the frustration, right? Is that people create problems for themselves. And by us providing more and more ways for them to interact with the stuff we make, whether it's on new platforms, whether it's with new devices,
just more room for more problems.
It's more room for more problems that they've created that somehow now we're responsible for.
Right.
And so a lot of it, and this is actually a lot of the reason why we are trying to avoid being on every platform in the universe in terms of every sales platform, because, and we're sticking with the ones that are the most prevalent, because when people have problems there, they're the same problems. Everybody's having exactly the same problems. Like if Steam suddenly isn't working on their device and they can't talk to the server or whatever,
then every Steam user
that's true for everybody. Yeah. We can go fix it once and it's done. Yeah.
Or Valve will fix it.
Or Valve will fix it. Depending on what the problem is, more likely Valve.
Yeah. All right. So next question comes from Flame It Kermit. Question is, Bedti the Yeti, are you happy that all the disabled Yetis go to the poverty end of society because they can't flip for Yeti interest? Are you happy?
This is a very astute.
This is a problem. So just for those who are unfamiliar with the Yeti Society, Yeti bankers only provide interest on earnings for the Yetis who have produced a prodigious number of excellent backflips.
Right.
And the more backflips you do, the more interest you will earn the next time you visit the Yeti bank. So I guess there's kind of, this is potentially a big problem in Yeti society, but there's kind of an added layer of complication, which is no one has ever seen a Yeti that can't do backflips.
That's true.
And so we don't know what happens. Either a Yeti just has never reached that state. They're just maybe very robust. Or something.
It might be.
Where it's possible that when a Yeti ceases to do backflips, they just cease to exist.
Right.
They just kind of poof away into another dimension. Nobody knows.
Like Jedi.
Sort of like how nobody's ever seen a Bigfoot, just in general. Nobody's ever seen a non-backflipping Yeti.
Yeah, that's just true. Yeah, show me one non-backflipping Yeti.
Yeah, you can't.
Can't
do it. So...
The proof is in the pudding.
The proof's in the pudding. So I think that's a fair question, but we just don't have the data to answer it.
What does it mean for the proof to be in the pudding? That must be
really
That has to be some weird evolution of another phrase, right?
Probably. Most of those kinds of phrases come from something that did make sense at one point and then slowly degenerated into something really fucking weird.
Yeah, what the hell? Like, you don't want anything in your pudding.
Pudding should be smooth, free of everything.
It should neither have lies nor truth in it. It should just be fucking pudding.
I mean, it probably came from some kind of weird dispute between two neighbors or something, and one of them was like, "I got the best fucking pudding recipe in the universe," and the other neighbor was like, "Fuck you, my pudding is the shit." And then they had a big cook-off, right?
Right.
And the whole neighborhood showed up, and they were like, "Prove it! Prove your pudding is the best." Finally, one of them won the competition.
Right.
Proof was in the pudding.
So it's about having to actually
you can't talk
show the thing.
Yeah, you can't talk about your pudding. You gotta make that pudding.
Right.
You gotta prove it.
Yeah. So I guess
give that pudding to the judge. That's where the proof
works
is.
Here. Bring us a Yeti that cannot do, and specifically YEDTI.
Yeah, we're not talking about Yetis. We're talking about Yetis.
Yeah.
Which is a different
thing entirely.
So yeah. All right, next question comes from Arcarnix. Again, Arcarnix is on a roll. How did Hardik get to Wonope? Do you know?
I do know. I had to think about it for a second because at first I was thinking, right, it's because, I guess this is revealed in Talfight 2.
Yes, but the backstory comes from the Crashlands manual, which is on our website.
Oh, that's true.
As well.
Yep.
But yeah, so the backstory is there was a society of Viru on Wonope. The Viru are the floaty head folks, and the Viru were all exiles from their society because Wonope is kind of like a prison planet for them. Probably because the juice fluctuations in the atmosphere and everything make it very difficult for Viru to reliably teleport their way off the planet.
Mm-hmm.
They can jump around and stuff, but they just can't go far enough to get away. So they're basically trapped. So the Viru had their own peaceful society, and then these 3 exiled Viru showed up at the same time.
These end.
Oh, that's
because
true.
We keep on adding.
Yeah, that's true. At the moment, it's 3, but history is foggy.
Yeah, history is foggy. I'm sure history will somehow be rewritten.
And their names were Fornicranios, Hugo Duco, and Pete. Mm-hmm. And they just caused a huge ruckus, and they basically overthrew the government, and they broke out of prison, and they went on a rampage, and they just kind of dismantled all of Viru society. It was very bad for everyone. Eventually, this led to Fornicranios imprisoning the Viru Joby, or Okeechobee, is his full name, in a prison maze. And Joby had managed to smuggle a wormhole crystal in his chin strap, and he was hiding it in the maze, and then they had just a little bit of power left in it. And he used his wormhole crystal to try to summon a hero, a champion, to break him out of this prison maze. But he accidentally missed because of the juice fluctuations.
Yeah,
right?
It's very hard to aim it with.
Yeah. And so instead of summoning, someone capable, he just summoned some random dude who was hanging out with his dog in a dog park.
Who turned out to be quite capable.
So Joby realized, oh shit, like this person is not going to be able to swing this. And so he used the last bit of last bit of power from his wormhole crystal to enchant Hardick's monocle to allow him to summon the very animals of the nature and use them as projectiles. So that's how Hardick got to Wonope.
Yeah, because it is on Wonope. So when you play Tile Fight 2, you are playing on the surface
of Wonope. Yeah. And actually, I believe the opening scene of Tile Fight 2 is the only time in any of our games that you will see Earth.
Oh, you mean, so they're on Earth at that time?
Yeah, they're in the dog park.
But is it on Earth though?
Probably.
Because it could be anywhere.
That's true. We don't actually know, but it's probable that it's Earth.
There's a decent chance. Who knows? History has yet to be written.
They may be in a space dog park. It's hard to say. So that's how hard it got to Wonope. But yeah, if you want to learn more about that, go to the Crashlands manual, which is in our lore section of our website, I believe.
Probably.
Or
if you just do a Google search for Crashlands manual.
Yeah, you can do that too. All right, next question comes from Tilly340. Hey, I just wanted to say that Crashlands has reminded me why I love video games and rekindled my passion for them. So what have you played that made you remember why you love games or fan the flames of said love? Keep doing what you're doing.
In recent
memory. What have you played where you were just like, fuck video games? And then you played it, you're like, never mind.
Actually, I don't play games that much. I'm currently on on more of the former end of that, where I'm just like meh. You know? But
I've seen it all.
but I think most recently it would be Kerbal Space Program.
Yes,
that's the one that I started playing it. Basically, Seth convinced me to go try it out, and I was like, well, I do like rockets, so like, how bad could this be? But I got really into that game, and it hits all the things that I think make the I guess games as a medium really spectacular, which is, as we talked about earlier, sort of defined systems and rule sets, and some allowance for self-discovery and self-directed learning for how to work within those rules. But it is particularly cool here, and particularly cool for me as a person who just loves science and that sort of thing, because it's also a simulation of real world stuff, that being orbital mechanics and aerodynamics and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so you get to play a game, which is actually just a simulation of you building your own space program, where you take out all the shit that sucks about that. Although they added it in new game types, because there's like career mode and whatever.
Like, now your rockets cost money, and you gotta do contracts from the government.
So they put it back in because apparently some people like that shit. But for me, like the original, the sandbox mode or the science mode, right? Actually, science mode.
Science mode is
because science mode still has the loops, so that you still have to.
You got to unlock your rocket parts
stuff but you do it just by making better rockets and getting further or discovering things. And so it kind of ties in all the things that video games do really well of loops and discovery and learning. But then again, couples that with real world kind of learning, where sure, if you become an expert Kerbal Space Program engineer, you're not also a real engineer, right? But you can now
have a basic sense of what it
you actually have far more than a basic understanding of that stuff, because a lot of that, they take things like orbital mechanics, which at some point in college in some physics class I remember learning about and just being like, I don't know how to even think about this, right? But now you go play Kerbal Space Program,
and in like 2 hours, you're like, oh yeah, I get it.
Right. It allows it to become intuitive for you.
Well, it's because you're not just scrawling shit on a piece of paper to calculate something. You're actually, you're playing with it, right? Yeah. You get to play with the orbits and try to.
And you get to ask what happens if I go faster in a particular direction,
and then you just get to see it happen.
You don't have to do the calc. And then, and the idea, the beauty of that is, if you were, say, a young kid playing the fuck out of Kerbal Space Program, then you go to your first physics class that teaches orbital mechanics. Now all of a sudden,
you know why you're learning.
You now know why. So now when you go learn the equations and stuff and see now how the equations behave when you do things, you can just cast your mind back to how that works in Kerbal Space Program, right? And now you can mirror the equations with quote unquote real life, right? Because you've seen this in a simulation. So yeah, so to me, Kerbal Space Program does, I think it takes all the best things about video games and then couples that with a lot of the great things about reality, right? In a really awesome way.
And about the interesting challenges of space flight and engineering. And,
well, especially when they added stuff like in the final update when they actually launched, when they've actually put in real aerodynamic simulation
and
stuff.
overheating heat from
So,
reentry.
right. So now all the stuff that I had learned spending a couple hundred hours previously playing this game basically didn't work anymore.
Yeah,
because now
you'd be like, oh, no problem. I'll just fly to Mars and back, and I'll just let my capsule come into the atmosphere at 4,500 kilometers a second. Nope,
not anymore. Now it's going to explode. And
now the question is, how do I slow down on the way in?
So you're trying to like burn, you're trying to bleed off velocity, but then
without exploding.
But then when you're in space, you can't cool off very fast so then you have to add radiative panels. And it does a really good job of teaching you all this stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, for me that's it. And actually that's really the only game in recent memory that like rekindled my love for the medium, I would say. Because everything else to me just feels like just another of a thing that already exists.
Yeah, so I'd say for me there's a few games on my list, and I've talked about them in the past, but I'd say there's kind of a few categories because I think there's three things for me that really sort of jump out as things that games can provide that other things have a really hard time doing.
Right.
So one of them is the idea of sort of strategizing and learning and sort of playing the knowledge game, right? So Kerbal Space Program is one of those. EVE Online is another one where the game itself is not that great, but it's just this really elaborate system or elaborate set of systems that you have to learn just in order to understand how and why things are happening. And then there's other people that get in the mix that you have to interact with.
Doing their own things.
Yeah, and that makes things even crazier. And so EVE is...
It's like a stripped down simulation of a real world politics and economies.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's just really, really interesting. And I talked to people who've been playing the game since it came out in 2003. And every day they play that game, they are blown away by something that they learned. It's just like you can play this game for years and years and years, and it's just like the real world, right? There's always something crazy happening. We're just like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
I had no idea.
The thing that I love so much about it, so I haven't played EVE. I just know a lot, sort of tangential to it because it gets talked about a lot. But I think the thing that I love about it in particular is just how much it really is a simulation of markets, right?
Yeah.
And in the same way you play Kerbal Space Program and you learn about orbital mechanics, if you play EVE, you learn about because markets are all fake, right? These are things that people just make up, even in real life.
Yep.
And now you can go see an actually fake market and see how it works. And there are people manipulating those markets in the game. Like the game is flexible and free enough that unlike something like, say, Diablo 3, where they try to keep a tight control over the economy and exchange rates and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Here, they're just like, do whatever you want.
Whatever happens,
Good luck.
happens.
Right. And there are all these questions of how do you make a system that allows for that doesn't then just end up with infinite inflation or whatever. And the game is built in such a way that it sort of self-corrects in a lot of ways because it's built the same way the real world is, with all these limits on how much resources there are and that sort of thing. And things can be destroyed. So, people will make $1 billion ISK, which is $1, right? It's like $1 billion ship, not real world dollars, but something very expensive. They spend an enormous amount of time and effort to accumulate the resources to make. And that thing can just get destroyed. All those resources are now gone.
Well, it's interesting because sometimes some people think of the game as a pay to win game. Right. In the sense that you can spend real world cash to buy a thing that you can sell in the game to another player for, about something like 1.2 billion ISK or something.
Right.
Which is a lot. There's a lot of in-game cash. If you want to get one of those huge ships, it'll take you probably something like, 30 to 100 billion ISK, which means you're spending, potentially hundreds and hundreds of dollars of real world cash. So the kicker is,
or the equivalent of anyway.
Yeah. So the kicker is, you could come into the game, play for a while, and then drop that kind of cash on getting one of these mega ships. But because you don't know anything, you're going to make a stupid mistake almost immediately, and people are going to pounce on it and explode it, right? So you can't just have a good ship and win. And actually, I just saw a video the other day where this one guy, he got attacked. He was in just a fairly standard, regular, not very powerful ship. He got attacked by 8 people at once, some of which were in ships way bigger than his and way better, but they were all brand new players.
Right.
And he just trounced him. He shouldn't have. He absolutely should not have. But because he knew more, there was no contest.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. It's just a really interesting game. So that's kind of like on the knowledge end of the spectrum. Then I think there's games that just have this ludicrous fun factor to them.
Yeah.
So to me, Rocket League, is one of those.
Definitely.
For me, anything where I can just go really fast, basically.
Yeah. Tribes.
Tribes Ascend and Rocket
so
League.
Good. Yeah.
Because in Tribes Ascend, you can go play a flag, like capture the flag game. Like World of Warcraft has capture the flag, right?
Yep.
But it's nothing like Tribes Ascend.
Nope.
In Tribes Ascend, you can get going 350 kilometers an hour as a person, and then and with a gun, right? And then you zoom by and pick up the flag. And the thing is, like, other people can go that fast too, and you can go that fast backwards, right? Yep. So
and you're slinging projectiles.
Yeah, like you'll pick up the flag and you're like weaving around and like going up and down hills and flying through the air, and then you can turn around with the flag and you'll see other people going just as fast as you are, trying to catch you, shooting at you, and you're shooting at them while going backwards. And they play dubstep when you pick up the flag. Right. I mean, it's just crazy.
It's a good moment.
Yeah, and it's always super fun. Unfortunately, that game died because of its monetization, which is another conversation. But
it does still exist. You're just gonna have trouble.
There's like 8 people playing.
Yeah,
and they're really
good.
good.
Yeah, yeah.
I should also say the game's matchmaking caused some issues as well. But
yeah,
it was a combination.
But if you've got a bunch of friends you can play with and can play a private match.
Oh yeah, it's
real good,
super fun. So Rocket League and Tribes are sort of the high speed, super fun, just ridiculous kinds of games. And then I think there's games that provide just this sense of wonder where you're just like, fuck, this is crazy. And I think World of Warcraft is one of those. Much more so back in the older days when this kind of a scale of a game was just unheard of.
I guess it doesn't really do things that, because back then when it came out, it was truly amazing as a technical achievement and all those kinds of things, right? Is it true today that when they launch a new expansion, is it really just like more of the same with like sort of like the incremental process we always see? And
basically, I'd say they still do things that most other studios have not yet been able to replicate. And the big one is the no loading times between zones concept, where you can see another zone and you just walk straight through, right? You walk to it and it's just continuous. And even something like Guild Wars 2 has these portals in between zones,
Right.
And so like their goal with making World of Warcraft was they wanted it to feel like a place. And so the only time you have a loading screen is if, say, like you hop on a boat and that boat goes across the ocean, that's when you
actually
see,
wait.
Yeah. Like where you would normally take you a month or something. Like that's when you see a loading screen.
Right.
And otherwise it's just totally continuous, and you have flying mount, so you can like hop on a helicopter or a rocket or something, and you can just fly straight up in the sky and you can scan the horizon. You can see, miles and miles around. And so I haven't seen anybody pull that off, and I still have no clue how they do it. I don't know. But yeah, so those are my 5.
It's a pretty good
my
list.
5 games. So yeah, if you haven't played any of those, you should check them out.
And the Steam sale is still on. I mean, it doesn't help for World of Warcraft, obviously, but
but
for everything else, I think Eve is free, but you can get it on Steam.
But Rocket League is on Steam
and on sale.
And
Tribes, I guess Tribes is also free, isn't it?
Yeah, look at this. All these free games on this list. Kerbal Space Program is probably on sale. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, get these games.
Kerbal Space Program is always on sale.
Yeah, get these games and play them. All right, so I think that's all the time we have. We kind of went over a little bit. But thank you all for listening. And once again, thank you all for just being here for us as a studio. It's been a hell of a year.
It's been a year.
And we're looking forward to whatever comes next.
Yeah, so happy new year. Go to hopefully 2017 is just as good for us as a studio, but much better for the world as a whole. And yeah, go to podcast.bscotch.net to ask us some more questions and listen to the rest of the podcast. You can subscribe to us anywhere. We'd love it if you would leave some comments and reviews and stuff. And if you would like to tell us why you're listening, which we would really, truly love to know, honestly, go to, on the podcast page, you'll find a link, or go to bit.ly/
WHYCWB.
WHYCWB, which is Why Coffee with Butterscotch.
But the
coffee butterscotch, because it's really long words.
Just go to podcast.bscotch.net. You'll find
that may be easier.
All right, well, see you next year.
Goodbye.
Peace.